So there you have it, a little bit of me jamming just to get us started. We're finally down to chapter 1, scene 7. This is the last we're going to hear of our dear friend little Samuel. But don't worry, the story continues with much drama. Chapter 1, scene 7, the start of it all. And a snippet of a scripture verse, the Lord appeared again in Shiloh. Samuel awoke disoriented. Oh, that's right. I'm with my family. It had been years since he had slept anywhere but with God. He chuckled. I hope he didn't miss me. He heard his familiar pre-dawn birds singing as he pulled back his blanket and sat cross-legged on his mat. Sunlight poured in under the flaps of the canvas tent. Whoa! If the sun be up, so must I, he thought. He jumped to his feet and tiptoed his way through a labyrinth of sleeping siblings. He reached the tent flap and slid out into brisk morning air. A bird flitted overhead and landed on a branch above him, a cascade of dew jewels falling all around. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, arched his back, and yawned. When he opened his eyes, it took several seconds for his brain to make sense of the image striking his retinas. The light that engulfed him was not the warm yellows of sunrise, but a bright bluish white. And it was not coming from the eastern horizon, but from straight overhead. It was not morning at all. Samuel turned toward the tent of worship. There stood a column, an undulating, iridescent, bluish-white pillar of light, the bottom of which hung just 20 feet above the roof of the tent, and the top of which Samuel lifted his eyes higher and higher and higher as his chin dropped lower and lower. He nearly fell backwards. The pillar of light blurred briefly where it passed through wispy cirrus clouds, then continued up toward the starry canopy, where it divided into sinewy offshoots like the roots of a tree held upside down. These roots waved in the ionosphere, blown by slow-motion interstellar breezes. A low hum emanated from the earth, tickling his toes. The air was tinged with the faintest hint of soprano voices or bells. A fresh pine mint scent filled his nostrils. The skin on his body tingled. His hair stood on end. He dropped to his knees on the damp grass. Tears welled up in his eyes. His chest began to heave. Dozens, then scores, then hundreds of memories flashed across the screen of his mind. The day his mother left him, the cruel words and fists of Hophni and Phinehas, the clumsy gruffness of old Eli. But as soon as each memory appeared, the poison of it was drawn out of his body and evaporated into the quavering air. The tears gushed on and on. He couldn't believe his eyes could hold that much water, while the memories and their subsequent depoisonings pressed one upon the other. After many minutes had passed, it may have been hours, he slumped over on his side and fell asleep. When he awoke, the sun was casting dappled shadows through the deep green leaves straight overhead. He felt as peaceful and rested as he could ever remember. He felt absolutely no pain, physical or emotional. He didn't know it at this stage of his life, but he also felt perfectly and blissfully drunk. He rolled over in the grass and was surprised to see members of his family lying about him in various stages of slumber. He sat up and saw dozens, then scores of people lying, sitting, and milling around. They crowded around the tent of worship. In his happy stupor, he couldn't imagine what they were all doing here, nor did he care. An involuntary giggle erupted from deep in his belly. He noticed that many of the faces around him were turned upward. "The pillar!" he blurted out. He turned quickly to see if it was still there. And it was, and it wasn't. Instead of a pillar of fire, there towered in its place a gently pulsating pillar of cloud. He laughed and flopped back down on his back so that he could follow its course straight up into the sky. Where there had been stars and inverted tree roots, there was now nothing but blue. The pillar of cloud went straight up into the sky until it faded from view. He laughed again, not knowing why. Little by little, it dawned on him that he was hearing the sound of many voices. Many, many voices. He staggered to his feet and looked at the countryside around him. As far as his eyes could see, people were coming toward the tent of worship. Some were running, some were on horseback, some pulled wagons. Many were being carried on homemade litters and makeshift stretchers. Most were walking. As they came, they cried or laughed or sang. Some wailed. Every so often, the general din was punctuated by loud cries, dancing and shouting. Another child was healed, another gaping wound closed, whereas in past weeks every mouth had said, "Where's Samuel?" Now, no one looked for him. As people came into the presence of the pillar, the blind, the lame, the deaf were healed. The sick were made well, and evil spirits departed. The wind of fresh romance blew through tired marriages. The discouraged were uplifted, and the feeble-minded began to speak clearly. More than one mother received her child back from the dead. People who had held grudges against their neighbors for years and years suddenly forgave them all, and they hugged one another with laughter and tears. Businesses turned from failing to prospering overnight. The cattle grew fat, the grass grew green, the rains fell at the right times. Day after day felt like the Feast of Tabernacles. Fathers played with their children, and mothers smiled on. No one could explain any of this. Few cared to try. Some of the priests and scribes tried to show that this was what had happened to the people of Israel in the days of Moses and Joshua. Joshua who? Was the most common response. Gradually, the general consensus came to be voiced in a simple, childlike verse. The glory has returned. The glory has returned. Praise the God of heaven, for the glory